Hey guys, and welcome to the Adventures in Toy World. Yes, the Adventures in Toy World segment of... Welcome back to that segment of Semajical Story Time, where we are about to continue the story of Rex and Daisy's adventure. In the second story, chronicling their first adventure, which will be Rex and Daisy in Teddy Bear Land. Rex and Daisy Finbar had now been in Toy World for 2 days and were looking forward to touring the world properly. The first stop on their tour was Teddy Bear Land, so they waited at a bus stop just outside the home for antique toys. About a minute later, the Ted 23 arrived. The driver, a friendly modern Teddy, greeted them warmly and gave them complimentary seats at the front of the bus. They arrived at Teddy Bear Land bus station in about half a minute, where they were greeted by their tour guide, a very friendly bear named Michael Fluffmore, who escorted them to his coach and seated them near the front without charging them, and off they went on their tour. Michael pointed out all the important landmarks and places of interest as they drove past them. After the tour, they were met by a family of teddy bears, whose name was Huggington, who had agreed to put them up. "Thanks for doing this, Mr. and Mrs. Huggington," said Rex, on their behalf. "Less of the Mr., please, dear boy. I'm Ted to you," replied Ted. "My brother and I are grateful to you for doing this, Mrs. Huggington," said Daisy to Ted's wife, and she smiled. "Please, Daisy, you and Rex are our guests. Call us Ted and Rose," she told her pleasantly, as they showed their guests to their rooms. Rex was going to be sharing a room with Ted and Rose's son, Benny, while Daisy was going to be sharing with their daughter, Jasmine. The Huggington family made Rex and Daisy feel very welcome and were fascinated to learn how they came into Toy World. Of course, it doesn't take a genius to know teddy bears eat honey and porridge, which Rex and Daisy were relieved to hear. "We can also offer you toast and cereal," Benny told them. Rex turned to his sister. "I think we're going to like it here," he said to her, and she nodded in agreement. Daisy was intrigued to learn that as a young cub, Jasmine was afraid of the dark and took a plush person to bed for comfort. "Jasmine's 2 years old," Rose told them. "Daisy's a year older," said Rex. This pleased Jasmine to learn her new human female friend was close to her in age. And that was Rex and Daisy in Teddy Bear Land. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a magical time. Hi guys, and welcome to the second installment of the Lana Sparks section of Semajical Story Time. It's now time to dive into the second story in this series, which will be Lana Sparks and Friends. Wonder City, 2498. Lana Sparks was a 10-year-old girl who lived with her parents, Rick and Harriet, and her two younger siblings, Tyler and Taurus, their little brother, who was only 2 years old. She was out with her best friends, Richard Supernova and Ethan Wormhole, and they were having a great time looking around Wonder City, which was once London, because Wonder City became Wonder City 200 years before, so it hadn't been London since 2298. They were at the Natural History Museum looking at the exhibits. Lana was most intrigued by a life-size clay sculpture of a caveman made by one of her ancestors, Rover Sparks, on the 23rd of August 2187. 301 years earlier. Ethan came to get her. "The museum closes in an hour, Lana. We should get going," he said, and the three of them left the museum. They were now back in the city as the sunset began, so they parted ways and went home. When she got home, she asked Harriet when people stopped using clay to make sculptures, and learned clay stopped being a thing in 2218. And they started using mechanized pieces to build the sculptures they had now. The first robo sculpture was completed on Christmas Eve 2220. It was commissioned by the Wonder City Art Institute in 2216. And built by your ancestor Lawrence Sparks between 2217 and 2220. They bought it from her on Boxing Day 2220 for 15,000 planets, she told her. "Oh yes, I forgot to mention last time that by this point in time, British currency had been replaced by 4 different kinds of coins. The bronze coins were called belts, after Orion's belt. It required 75 of these to make up one of the silver coins, which were called moons, after the moon. It required 160 of these and 250 belts to make up one of their golden coins, which were called stars. It required 750 of these, 540 moons, and 1,250 belts to make up one of their platinum coins, which I just said were called planets. It surprised Lana to learn this, considering that her pocket credit was 50 stars, 25 moons, and 12 belts, which she was pleased with. At school the next day, she was talking to Richard and Ethan about what they hoped to be when they grew up. "I'd like to be a space explorer," said Lana. Their teacher, Mrs. Shuttler, stepped in. "There's nothing stopping you achieving that goal one day," she told her encouragingly. Even Rick and Harriet told her the same thing, as they thought that career would suit her well. And so, that was the story of Lana Sparks and friends. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. There will be another one soon. Until then, thanks for watching and have a Semajical time. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Adventures in Toy Worlds category of Semajical Story Time. So we're now on to the third chapter of the first story arc, and that should be The Naughty Dolly. Rex and Daisy had been in Toy World for a month and a half and were enjoying their time there. As they were exploring Dolchester, a city inhabited entirely by dolls, of all different kinds, from porcelain to modern plastic and rubber, it was a very interesting place to the human eye. They were looking around Dolchester Medical Centre, which ran just like a hospital in the real world, except all the staff and patients were obviously dolls. A friendly nurse was showing them around the premises, and they were amazed by what they were seeing. They were being shown the Dolliatrics ward, which was the ward for all young doll children. Yes, they did have male dolls in Dolchester, and were treating them there. To differentiate them from the females, they called them dolls, and the females were dollies. What do you call the adults of Dolchester? Asked Rex. The same thing we call the children, except we add the man and woman suffixes to the end. It was then that Daisy noticed that their guide, Nurse Danielle Porcer, was actually a porcelain doll woman. And none of the patients on her ward were the same kind of doll as her, but were all either plastic or vinyl dolls. And she was the head nurse on the ward. "Can I ask a question?" she asked. "Of course, Daisy," replied Danielle. "How come none of the patients on your ward are made of china?" she asked. "Porcelain, sweetie. And the reason for that is the hospital denied my request to look after only patients of my own type," replied Danielle. At that point, one of the patients jumped on the bed of another dolly and started hitting her around. The dolly's name was Amber Dolman. She was 6 years old and was often this naughty regardless of any tourists visiting. Danielle rushed over to the bed and grabbed Amber off the other dolly's bed. She was very cross and placed Amber back in her own bed and began wagging her finger at her. "Amber Dolman, how dare you leap on Amelia's bed and start hitting her around like that? You are a very naughty dolly, and this behavior is even more inappropriate when we have visitors with us today," she scolded. By this point, Rex and Daisy were at the bedside and were not impressed. Rex looked at Amelia, the crying dolly. He sat down and started comforting her. Amber looked at Rex and Daisy. "Who are these new dolls?" she asked. Daisy gave the dolly a look of disgust. "Oh, you naughty, rude little dolly! Rex and I are not dolls or toys of any kind. We're human children," she scolded, wagging a finger just as Danielle had done. Rex was standing back at Amber's bedside. "You owe Amelia an apology," he scolded. Amber gave him a dirty look, and then did the same to Amelia. "I don't apologize to cry dollies," she said nastily. Danielle picked up the phone. "If you're well enough to behave like this, you're well enough to go home," she scolded, and called Amber's parents. An hour later, Amber's parents arrived to pick up their naughty daughter and were very angry with her for the way she behaved. Her mum, Ashley, smacked her bottom in front of everyone. "You are going straight to bed when we get in," she scolded. Her dad, Daniel, grabbed her and put a restraint on her. "This should prevent you from running off and attacking anyone else's son or daughter," he scolded as they dragged her out of the hospital. Danielle felt bad and turned to Rex and Daisy. "I'm sorry you had to see that, my lovelies," she said apologetically. "That's okay," replied Rex. Danielle felt so bad for the siblings, she sent them in a taxi to the only part of Toy World where humans live harmoniously with toys, to stay with the Bateman family, a human man named Oliver, who was married to a dolly woman, it should be a doll woman anyway, and their son Tyler, who was a doll-human hybrid known as a dollman. And was the first doll-human hybrid born in the land. This place was called Toy Earth City. We'll get to this part of Toy World next time. By the way, we won't, because I changed directions. You'll find out what the next story is when I read it next time. Well, next time I do an episode of this segment. So until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and do have a Semajical time. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Zediverse category of Semajical Story Time. But we get into the spin-off territory with this third installment because it is Zedda's Origins, Whirlwind. On the 13th of July 1995, Maxwell and Leah O'Horn were in hospital as Leah had just given birth to their son, Jack. They named him after Max's father, whose name was also Jack. They registered his name as Jack Brian O'Horn after both their fathers. Brian Dempsey being Leah's father. Yeah, they loved him to pieces and wanted the best for him. Within 2 days, they brought him home, and everyone thought he was an adorable baby. Over the next 4 years, Jack was just a normal boy, with no abnormalities noticed by anyone. When he was 5, things started to change. As Max moved from Spinner City, moved them to Spinner City, and that's when his normality began to fade, as he began refusing to eat his meals. They took him to the hospital for an emergency checkup, and they determined what they overlooked at the time of his birth. The room temperature suddenly got colder and humid, with a strong wind, and a strong wind started blowing through the room, and Jack started spinning his arms until he spun around the room as well. Dr. Moon turned to them. "Your son has chromosome Z, folks. We overlooked this when Jack was born," he told them apologetically. Jack landed gently back on his feet, but was shocked like his parents What's chromosome Z? Asked Leo. It's a spare chromosome that develops out of the blue, that adapts itself into either male or female, and causes the holder to mutate and develop special powers. It's an extreme rarity. Jack's one of 3 children with the chromosome. He told them. Who are the other 2? Asked Max. I'm sorry, but that's strictly confidential. I'm not allowed to share that information, replied Dr. Moon. 2 years later, Jack was playing in the garden when he thought to himself about how and why he didn't have any friends. So he decided to go whirling around to find some friends. And it's here that we must stop. Here, that doesn't make sense. As this is where the story leads into Whirlwind Rises, Chromosome Z2, which I've already read and you can go back and read it. So the next story of this category will come as soon as I have it ready. Until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a Semajical time. Hey guys, and welcome back to the oldest man segment of Semajical Story Time, where we now get into the second installment in that series, which is naturally called The Oldest Man Returns. Here we go. Welcome back everyone, as you know by now. My name is Milton Keynes, and I'm the oldest man ever to ever live. It has been 10 years since you last saw me. That makes me 175 years old and still kicking it in the year 2029. And I am loving my quiet life here at Oaken Hill Home for the Retired, after having been moved here 5 months ago. I am very happy here and have made lots of friends. Like everyone at my last home, they are all intrigued by my extraordinarily long life and always ask me to recount my early life to them. I tell them about it and the secret to my insanely long life being an all-cereal, low-carb diet with no sweets, takeouts or fizzy drinks. I've been drinking water all my life, I tell them, and they are all gobsmacked as to how I've managed to live in perfect health for way longer than the average human man. Being the age that I am gives me a century and 3/4 worth of knowledge. Of course, it's not safe to assume I'll live to or past the age of 200. All of that remains to be seen, but I don't care how long I end up living. I surprise myself with how long I've lived already. However, I'm not yet ready to bite the dust, as I have lots to live for. I know my health will decline eventually. Enough of that now. as it's time for me to go and have my nap considering how old I am. I do get tired easily, which is to be expected, so this is where we must part ways for now. I hope to see you again soon. Peace out. And so that was The Oldest Man Returns. The next story along these lines is coming as soon as I have it ready. But until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a magical time. Hey guys, and welcome to the third installment of the Tales from Animalia section of Semajical Story Time. So, what's the first story in this series? Well, it is, of course, The Great Discovery. Last time we saw Adam Barnsley. He was recovering from shark shock after a shark attack in the Aqua Nations whilst out on a job. 3 years have passed since then, and he was happily spending time with his loving wife Leah Tallensmere, the peregrine falcon, and their hybrid daughter Sophie Barnsley Tallensmere, who was now an adventurous and imaginative 8-year-old girl. They were sitting around chatting about Adam's first time in Animalia 13 years before. Sophie loved hearing about her father's initial arrival so much that she kept asking him to recount it, because it was when he first met everyone, including Leah, who also remembered it fondly, as it was when they first got together and fell in love. Those events occurred 2 years before they were married, and 6 years before having Sophie. Adam remembered how amazed he was to meet all these humanoid animals, who made him feel welcome. Later, Sophie went out for a fly to stretch her wings, which were fused to her human arms, when she noticed a clearing she hadn't seen before. So she decided to investigate it. She swooped down and landed gently on the ground and started walking through the clearing, rummaging through the foliage, until she found something the entire continent believed to be lost, and had actually been so for over 3,000 years. "Oh my goodness," she said as she carefully unearthed the precious golden crown. "It's the crown of the first king of Animalia, the legendary King Leon the Conqueror." She said in amazement. She took it to the palace to show King Leo, and he was utterly speechless. "Father?" asked Prince Lennox, waving his paw in his father's face. King Leo came around and smiled at Sophie. "Where did you find this, Sophie?" he asked. "It was hidden in a deep clearing just north of the city, sire," replied Sophie, bowing to her king. It wasn't long before the whole of Animalia came to see the crown, and bombard the famous young human falcon hybrid daughter of Adam and Leah with questions about her great discovery. A label on the crown's pedestal told everyone who discovered it, and the exact date of the discovery. The crown of King Leon the Conqueror was discovered by Sophie Barnsley Tallensmere September 17th, 3154 AT. This meant it had only been the 17th of September 3141 AT at the time of Adam's arrival in our very first story, and the same day in 3151 when the previous tale took place. When Adam left London, it was 2019, making the year in London 2029 at the time of his shark shock, which means it would be 2032 in London at the time this story takes place on the Animalian calendar. Adam and Leah were very proud of Sophie for finding the sacred crown, which was now restored to its rightful place. And that was the great discovery. I hope you'll be able to join me next time, but until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and whatever you do, have a Semajical time. Hey guys, and welcome to the 7th installment of the Amazing World Anthology segment of Semajical Story Time. So what's the next story I'm going to be telling you? Well, it is, of course, Accused. Timmy Jones was a normal 10-year-old boy who lived with his parents and younger sister Miriam in central London. He loved spending time with them as much as hanging out with his friends. He had a good life until one day something happened that changed his young life forever. Ruined it, as a matter of fact, as the police turned up to arrest him. This confused him and his family as he was handcuffed in front of them. "Why are you arresting my son?" demanded his dad. "Timothy Jones, I'm arresting you for suspicion of murder. You do not have to say murder? That's ridiculous. My little boy would never commit such a monstrous act," his mum yelled. "Release my son this minute," his dad demanded. That didn't work as the police finished reading him his rights and hauled him away. He now sat in the back of a police car on his way to jail for a crime he didn't commit. He was soon sitting in a jail cell at the police station. "But I didn't do it," he kept yelling out. "Your victim was Deborah Gray, and her family has lots of evidence against you," the officer told him. "And what evidence is that, I'd like to know?" he asked. "A bloody knife with your fingerprints on it, a bloody glove you left behind, and," the officer told him, "let me guess, a false confession," said Timmy as he looked at the note. "That proves I'm innocent. It isn't my handwriting. It looks like a 5-year-old wrote it," he said. No matter what Timmy told them, the police didn't believe him. The only people who did believe in his innocence were his family, friends, and doctors, teachers, and lawyer who had come to see him. "Tim, I'm going to do everything I can to get you off the hook. But this murder you've been accused of is very serious," he told him. Timmy handed him the confession, which he looked at very carefully. "This is a piece of evidence they've got against you," he scoffed. "Yes, sir," replied Timmy. This is a totally false confession. No one in their right mind would have let their 5-year-old write such a forgery. He told them. After he left, Timmy got the sergeant to take a closer look at the note, but he didn't believe him. He appeared in court in the next 2 months, and his defense included testimonies from his mum, dad, sister, best friends, grandparents, headmaster, doctor, aunts, uncles, and cousins, all defending his innocence. After that, they called him to the stand, and he pleaded for his own innocence by telling the court exactly where he was at the time the murder took place. I was at the local park with my friends playing football. Nowhere near the victim at the time, he told them honestly. Whilst the prosecution were making their case against him, they brought the knife and glove forth as evidence. They asked Timmy to come and try on the glove, which instantly fell off his hand because it genuinely did not fit him. The judge read the confession. Son, can you write on this piece of paper for us, please? He asked, and Timmy obliged. And it didn't match the untidy scrawl on the confession. Objection! Called the prosecutor, but the judge overruled it. Whoever wrote that confession, it was not the defendant, as he does not write with an untidy scrawl, he shouted. But he killed my daughter, yelled Deborah's mum. The judge banged the gavel. I must warn you, madam, that if you disrupt the court, I will have you arrested for contempt. That's contempt of court, he warned her. The head juror stood up. Your Honor, we've heard enough. We have reached our verdict, she said. Would you please read the verdict? Asked the judge. We find the defendant, Timothy Jones, on account of murder, not guilty, read the juror. The judge addressed Timothy Jones. You have been tried by a jury of your peers and found innocent of murder. And based on the so-called evidence presented before us here today, I'm not surprised. You were wrongly accused. And it is the order of this court that your accusers apologize for accusing you, he ordered upon banging the gavel. Timothy received apologies from Deborah's family for falsely accusing him, and from the police for not believing him or his family. And that would have been enough, would it? You're not going to fire the police? Or maybe imprison the family for accusing him? So, that was accused. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Until then, until next time, have a magical time, will you? Hi guys, and welcome back to the Destinyverse category of Semajical Story Time. The 14th installment of the franchise overall starts here. This is Crystal's Big Idea, the 5th of that series. London, 1948. Crystal Ball was a very loving mother to her adoptive daughter Lily, who was now 10 years old. Crystal was planning a big surprise for her and had been for some time with the help of Destiny. And Dennis, I hope Lily likes her surprise, says Dennis. She's been feeling down lately, so I thought of this as a way to cheer her up, replied Crystal. It's a brilliant idea, sweetheart, but what if it doesn't go according to plan? Said Destiny. I've tried talking to her, but she couldn't bring herself to tell me why she was feeling down, replied Crystal. They all got to work getting everything ready for the surprise. Crystal had planned for Lily a party to show her how much they loved her. It was a huge undertaking and took them until 3:30 to finish preparing and dim the lights and drew the curtains. When they heard Lily come in the front door and waited for her to walk through to the dining room before springing out on her shouting, "Surprise!" She was most pleasantly surprised, and a big cheeky smile spread across her face. They were pleased to see her back to normal, but still partied anyway. Crystal could tell she was enjoying herself and grabbed her into a special hug. I love you very much, my darling, she told her before showering her with kisses. I love you all too. And thanks for the party, replied Lily. You're more than welcome, baby, replied Destiny. You are a beautiful niece, replied Dennis. And they all hugged her. Crystal gave her a smile. It was my idea, my sweet angel. I wanted to cheer you up after feeling down for about a week, she told her. And you have certainly done that, replied Lily, laughing. Crystal laughed with her while taking her hand and dancing with her. That night, as Crystal put Lily to bed, they talked. And she came clean about why she'd felt down for a week, and they both laughed at it until they were asleep in each other's arms. The next day, Crystal decided not to send Lily to school, but let her sleep longer. So she got up and went to do some housework. My little girl is so sweet, she said with pride. Now, that was Crystal's big idea, and if you thought it was more about Lily than Crystal, I'm sorry. But just wait until the next installment, which will come as soon as. But until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have a Semajical time. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Adventures in Toy World segment of Semajical Story Time. At this point, we're one away from 50 episodes of this show, and it's now the 4th installment of that series, which will be Board Game Land. Rex and Daisy have been in Toy World for nearly 6 months, And as a last visit before sending them home to the human world, the Master of Games decided to take them on a tour of his home, Board Game Land. Upon stepping into the capital city of Board Game Land, Monopoly City, he pronounced, "Welcome to Monopoly City, capital of Board Game Land," he said as he escorted them via a taxi around the land. They looked out the windows, amazed, as they passed a mansion with a group of 6 people aged between 14 and 17, trying to solve a murder. "Cluedo Manor," he told them. Next, they passed a studio with 4 contestants queued up outside, waiting to go in and play 5 rounds of quizzes. "Trivial Pursuit," he told them, as they went to question him. They were soon dropped off outside a fenced-off area in which a young man was about to take the walk of life. "What game is this?" asked Daisy. "It is called the Game of Life," replied the Master of Games, as he moved them on to the city hospital, where they saw a young woman about to go under for an operation. "Operation?" asked Rex. "That is correct, Rex," replied the Master of Games. "How did people at Toy World get their qualifications to come into our world?" asked Daisy. To answer this question, the Master of Games took the children to see the university from which toys could earn degrees to work in the human world as the loyal toys of children. At Universitoy, young toys and dolls could pursue such majors as love for your child, loyalty to your child, friendship, adventuring in the human world, and many more. Rex and Daisy were amazed to meet a 21-year-old doll named Becky Vinylface, who was preparing to graduate from her major as a guardian, a job that required her to enter a human child's life to help them grow up and watch over them to make sure they were happy. She was being assigned to a toddler named Janet Ryan, who was about to turn 2 years old. She'd be entering her life as a seemingly ordinary doll packed in a box and bought from a toy shop. After seeing this, the children were escorted back to the field they arrived in and sent back to their own world through the toy box. "What an adventure," said Rex. "Will we ever go back to Toy World?" asked Daisy. "Of course we will, but not through the toy box." Rex then told Daisy that by the time they did get back into Toy World, it may be several years or decades later in Toy Time. Now, I should point out before I sign off that I've actually retconned what I've said here in a spin-off, and we'll get to that in due course. So, now you know there's been a retcon. Listen out for it. But that's it for this episode. Join me next time for the 50th episode. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to be reading for that. You'll have to wait and see. Until then, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and have a Semajical time. Hi guys, and welcome to a rather special episode of Semajical Story Time. Our first milestone in the series. The 50th. Yeah, that's right. And I thought instead of focusing on one segment, I would treat you to a few stories from different folders. So without further ado, to kick off the 50th episode of Semajical Story Time, let's start with Benny the Bus, a transport story. All the buses at the Sunny Island Depot were very special buses, because unlike most buses, they had lives of their own. This is the story of one little bus in particular. This little bus's name was Benny. He was a small, blue, single-decker with a green stripe on either side. He seated up to 30 passengers at a time on his leather seats. His driver, Tony McClure, sat in his cab driving passengers while his conductor, Travis Fisk, sold the tickets to customers. One sunny morning, they were doing their rounds when they were flagged down by a new traveller at the Red Lane bus stop. "Hello there, sir," he said politely, as he opened his door to let the man board. "Good morning, driver," he said to Tony. "Good morning," replied Tony. The man bought a return ticket to the Sunny Island shopping centre. "That'll be £3, please, sir," said Travis. The man paid the £3 and took his seat. "Thank you, conductor," said the man, and went to sit down in a window seat, and they set off. Benny was so happy he started to sing his Jolly Days song. The man thought it was a beautiful song, and wondered where Benny learnt it. "Next stop, Sunny Island Shopping Centre," Travis announced. The man stood up as Benny pulled into the shopping centre bus stop. As he stepped off, he thanked Travis and Tony. As he stepped off into the bus stop, he turned to Benny. "Thank you, Benny. I enjoyed my ride," he told him. "You're welcome, sir," replied Benny happily as he drove off. "That is one very special little bus," he said to himself as he entered the shopping centre. As Benny made his way to his next customer's destination, he passed one of his fellow buses from the depot, Declan the double-decker, who honked cheerfully as he saw him passing by. Then he tooted back. Benny loved his route because he got to pass all his friends, including Tammy the taxi, who worked for the taxi service, Aaron the aeroplane, the fastest flyer in the world, and the pride of the Sunny Island airport, Helen the helicopter, who usually flew high above the island, looking for those in need of help in emergencies, Steve the steam engine from the Sunny Island Heritage Railway, the only operational steam locomotive on the island. The only stops not on his route were Sunny Island Railway and Sunny Island Port, so he never passed his modern railway or seaworthy friends. There goes the neighbourhood in the beginning. The dawn of a new world, 0 PE. In the beginning there were only the Guardians, a race of immortal beings whose job it was to bring new worlds into existence, simply by creating portals to blank canvases to create them on. Mr. Multiple and Miss Sunshine were the two Guardians who had created more worlds than any other Guardians, and it was time to create yet another new world. "Come on, Miss Sunshine. It's time to create our 1 millionth new world," said Mr. Multiple. Miss Sunshine joined him as he opened up a portal, and they jumped through it into the blank canvas. As soon as they arrived in the canvas, they prepared to perform the creation process, which goes like this. First, they raise their hands high above their heads. Next, they begin chanting in their native tongue, Guardianese, one of the most ancient divine languages. Ni chu cha na tuch, shan shu portus ortus, furtus berthus, nuvus unis, livus commandus. And then finally they throw their arms out in front of them and close their eyes and mutter their chant again in modern day English or whatever, and bump each other 3 times, and when they part, their new world will be born. They followed all 3 steps in the proper sequence, and when they'd finished, they found themselves standing in a lush green field at the entrance to their portal. It's beautiful, said Miss Sunshine in awe. It is, isn't it? However, we need to begin time for this new world, replied Mr. Multiple. So they put their hands together to perform the time ritual, which goes like this. First, they close their eyes and put their hands together. And finally, they say in their native tongue, Chrono Beginnus Commandus. This they did, and when they were done, time had begun for their new world. This world has its own calendar to follow. This is the portal era, as it was started via a portal, and portals will open every time another world wishes to make contact with this one, said Mr. Multiple. We need inhabitants to come and live in this world, replied Miss Sunshine. And come they shall, replied Mr. Multiple. The first inhabitants arrive, 0 PE. It was a day before the first crowd of inhabitants came to live in the new world. 4 families had just moved in. The families who had just moved in were the Barretts, Strattons, Marshes, and Duncans. The Barrett family consisted of 5 members. James was the father, Millie was his wife and the mother of his 4 children. His children, and their 3 young children were Romana, Roscoe, and Lily. The Stratton family consisted of 4 members. Darren was the father, Sarah was his wife and the mother of his children, and their 2 young children were Roscoe and Lizzie. The Marsh family consisted of just a young mother named Jackie and her baby daughter Lana. Her boyfriend sadly split shortly after Lana was born. And the Duncan family consisted of 3 members. Paul was the father, Kate was his wife and the mother of his young daughter Nikita. And this one young girl was the naughty type. All 4 families had only lived here a few hours before Nikita decided to demonstrate her naughty behavior for everyone to see by throwing a stone across the park, hitting Lily in the process. Score! She said proudly. Before she could escape, Kate grabbed her. Nikita Charlotte Duncan, that was very naughty. How dare you throw that stone at poor Lily? She's only 5, she scolded. Paul dragged her over to where the Barretts were sitting and crossed his arms. Apologize to this poor little girl right now, he ordered. Nikita looked at Lily crying and laughed. That crybaby needs a nappy on, she said. This made James jump up and grab her. No, she definitely does not, I can't believe I'm about to lecture you, a 9-year-old, about this, but throwing stones is really dangerous because it could seriously hurt someone. You hit poor Lily with that damn stone, which I might just add has hurt her very badly. You will apologize and you will say it like you mean it, he scolded. Millie picked Lily up and wiped blood off her head. James, we need to get poor Lily to the hospital and fast, she told him in a panic. James forgot about getting Lily the apology and rushed her to the hospital. When Mamana and Roscoe saw this, they started shoving Nikita around. That's our sister you've just sent to the hospital with a serious head injury, yelled Romana. What did you throw a stupid stone at her for? That was extremely stupid of you, Roscoe yelled at her. It was then that Darren stepped in and took them out of the situation before it got out of hand. Kate and Paul angrily dragged Nikita home and put her to bed, on top of grounding her for 5 weeks. All this madness happening within the first year of the universe's timeline. Well, I never. Lily in the portal, 0 PE. It was 4:15 on a Friday afternoon, and Miss Sunshine was babysitting Lily while James and Millie were at Romana and Roscoe's school play. She decided Lily needed some fresh air and taken her to the park. Can you tell me about the portal, please, Miss Sunshine? Asked Lily. Well, sweetie, the first thing you have to know about the portal is that travelling through it alone at your age is forbidden by portal law, as it's very dangerous and you don't know where you could end up. Miss Sunshine warned her kindly. What age by portal law is the legal age for solo travel? Portal travel, asked Lily. The legal age for travelling through the portal unaccompanied is 18 years and over. While under that age, you must be accompanied by a responsible adult, replied Miss Sunshine. I'm with you, Miss Sunshine. You're a responsible adult, aren't you? Said Lily. Well, yes, I am, but as one of the guardians of this universe, I don't think it's wise for me to accompany you through the portal without consent from your parents, said Miss Sunshine kindly. Fair enough, replied Lily. Nikita came by at that moment and picked Lily up. What a load of old rubbish! If Lily wants to go on an adventure, I'll help her, she said in her naughty tone. She carried Lily to the nearest portal entrance. Put the poor girl down at once, you naughty little girl, Miss Sunshine ordered. Of course, replied Nikita, and activated a portal and put Lily through it. Look what you've done, you naughty girl. I'll have to go in after her, Miss Sunshine scolded, and she ran through the portal after Lily. Wonderland. Lily was soon ejected from the portal into Wonderland, where Alice, a kind 7-year-old girl, found her and looked after her until help came. At that moment, another portal opened and Miss Sunshine stepped out. Lily, thank goodness you're all right. I was so worried, she said, relieved that Lily was safe. Miss Sunshine, what's going on? Asked Alice. Well, Alice, Lily ended up here because a very naughty little girl named Nikita back in our universe thought it was a great idea to throw her through a portal, explained Miss Sunshine. Alice was not impressed by what she'd just heard. She handed Lily over to Miss Sunshine. Take her, she belongs in your universe, she said, giving Lily a hug goodbye. Thanks for looking after me, Alice, said Lily. Miss Sunshine took her by the hand. Okay, sweetie, are you ready to go home? She asked. Yes, Miss Sunshine, replied Lily. And they stepped through another portal. The neighborhood, 0 PE. They arrived safely back. in the neighborhood where Millie was waiting to pick Lily up. She was with Paul and Kate, who had Nikita on restraints like a toddler. Millie beckoned Lily to her, and Lily came into her arms. "Mummy's precious little girl," she said lovingly. Miss Sunshine stepped in. "I'm so sorry, Millie," she began, but Millie cut in. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Miss Sunshine, but you're not at fault. You were very responsible and went in after Lily when this naughty little girl here," she said, indicating Nikita, "threw her through that portal. You did a great job taking care of her, and I thank you for it," she said. "You're welcome, Millie. Lily is such a cute and well-behaved girl. It was such a pleasure to look after her." Miss Sunshine assured her. "Where did she end up, anyway?" asked Millie. "Wonderland," came Lily's reply. "See, she ended up in Wonderland. She was safe," interrupted Nikita. "Yeah, no thanks to you," said Lily. "But you were safe," said Nikita. Kate smacked her. "Safe or not, you were very naughty to throw her through that portal in the first place. Apologize to her at once," she scolded. "No way," said Nikita rudely. Millie stepped in. "Excuse me, young lady, but I'm not leaving until my daughter gets her well-deserved apology. You put her in mortal danger by throwing her into the portal like that. She could have ended up anywhere, and you're very lucky she was safe and Miss Sunshine was able to locate and rescue her. You will apologize to her, and you are going to be sincere about it," she scolded. Nikita just stood there. Miss Sunshine stepped in. "Nikita Duncan, if you don't apologize to Lily this minute, I will be forced to charge you with 1 count of breaching an important law and 1 count of negligent behavior towards another child, and put you in the juvenile wing of a detention dimension to await trial for your crimes," she scolded. "I'm not saying anything," said Nikita. Miss Sunshine arrested Nikita for 1 count of breaking the portal law against unaccompanied portal travel and 1 count of negligence towards another child younger than her. She used her divine powers to change Nikita into a prison jumpsuit and escorted her through the prison portal. Juvenile wing detention dimension. "This is where you deserve to be, young lady. You will be held here until we can set up your trial date, which could take about a year to fix. You have the right to an attorney. If you do not have one, the court will appoint one for you. Needless to say, you will be looking at another 14 years in this dimension if the jury finds you guilty." Miss Sunshine scolded, processing Nikita and locking her in a holding cell. She instructed the prison officers to keep a close eye on their new prisoner and make sure she didn't try to escape before taking her leave through the home portal. The neighborhood, 0 PE. She made her safe return to the neighborhood and assured the barracks that justice will be served for Nikita's criminal behavior, and instructed Kate and Paul to find a lawyer to represent Nikita at her trial. She's going to be tried by the Dimensional Court in about a year's time. You need to find a lawyer to represent her in court, or they'll appoint one for her, she told Kate and Paul. A few days later, the court portal opened, and a representative stepped out into the park. Miss Sunshine came to meet him. "I'm sorry, Miss Sunshine, but Nikita Duncan's case cannot be tried in our interdimensional courtroom due to her age. So we'll have to try her as a juvenile, which means you will need to escort her to a hearing in the juvenile wing of the detention dimension in exactly a year from now. It will be there that there and then that her punishment will be decided, he told her. Thank you, Judge Simulo, said Miss Sunshine, before saluting him and seeing him back through his home portal. She went to update the families involved in the case. Gordon on Strike, A Tale from the Tracks. Obviously, written by me. Early one morning at Tidmouth Sheds, the engines were awaiting their day's jobs when suddenly Thomas spoke. "It is a lovely morning, isn't it?" he said. "It certainly is, Thomas. It certainly is, Thomas," said a deep booming voice. "Glad you agree, Gordon," said Thomas. "I didn't say anything, little Thomas," said Gordon. "Oh, then who did?" asked Thomas. "Thomas the Tank Engine! I would have thought you would know your controller's voice when you hear it," boomed the voice. Thomas looked down in front of him, and to his surprise, there stood the Fat Controller. "Cinders and ashes!" he exclaimed. "Never mind, Thomas. We all make mistakes from time to time," replied the Fat Controller kindly. "Me? Make mistakes? Oh, the indignity!" said Gordon. "Yes, Gordon, even you make mistakes sometimes," replied the Fat Controller. "Oh, the indignity!" repeated Gordon. "For goodness sake, Gordon, will you stop whining?" said James angrily. "Me? Stop whining? Oh, the indignity!" said Gordon stroppily. "Silence!" snapped the Fat Controller. "You can find another engine to do my work today. I'm not doing any work," said Gordon sulkily. "James shall do your work," said the Fat Controller ordered. James delightedly went off to get ready. "Yes, sir," he said as he left the sheds. "Fancy a big important engine like Gordon sulking because he makes mistakes," said Percy innocently. "I do not make mistakes. I am a very important engine. Silly Percy!" scoffed Gordon. "That's quite enough of that," snapped the Fat Controller. "But sir, started Gordon again, but the Fat Controller cut across him. "For goodness sake, Gordon, will you stop this ridiculous brag about not making mistakes? You are making a massive mistake right now, showing how selfish and childish you can be. You can stay in your shed until I can trust you again," he scolded. "Yes, sir," replied Gordon, now feeling ashamed of himself for his outburst. Will Gordon redeem himself? When will the Fat Controller be able to trust him again? You'll have to wait until next time to find out. And you really will. Only that won't be for a while yet. Because that's it for this 50th episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Next time we return to solo stories from different categories. I just thought I should do something special for this episode. So, if you enjoyed, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching. And have us a magical time. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Amazing World segment of Semajical Stories, where it's time for story number 7 or 8 in that franchise, mate, one of the two, in that category, and that would be Always 10. Madison West was in many ways a normal young woman of 33, except since she turned 10, she'd remained the same in appearance due to a birth condition that caused her, that should be two, stop aging at that age. This was strange because it meant she'd never be able to work or live on her own and always needed a carer to look after her. As a child, she wanted to be a nurse and be married with children of her own, but couldn't because of her condition. No, because her condition caused her to look like a 10-year-old for the rest of her life. Despite all of this, her puberty went well, and she at least sounded like a woman rather than a child. So she still aged internally and did as much housework as she could manage. Her care worker was a very kind and loving woman named Vicky Lane. She'd left school 17 years earlier with 5 GCSEs and graduated university with a first-class honours degree in theatre studies. Vicky took her to an Amdram group once a week on a Friday afternoon, which she really enjoyed and was already quite a bit higher ranking member of the group. Everyone was intrigued by her young appearance and very grown-up behaviour and outlook on life. She was often mistaken for a skiving 10-year-old and taken to school when found, but turned away because the schools all knew that despite her physical appearance, she was actually an adult. Here, however, she was recognized and treated as the woman she actually was. She needed Vicky because, due to her appearance and low muscle tone, there was a lot she couldn't do for herself. But she didn't ever think negatively about her special needs, as she couldn't stand it when those with special needs thought themselves to be inferior. "Don't you dare speak about yourself like that," she'd scold anyone like her who did think that way about themselves. She didn't care that her condition caused her to stop growing 23 years earlier and loved her life as it was. So guys, if any of you out there have special needs, don't think yourselves as inferior people because of that. This story should be a good moral to you on that. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. And until next time, thanks for watching and have us a magical time. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Adventures in Toy World section of Semajical Story Time. But we're taking a break from the main storyline to present 2 spin-offs to you guys. The first of which being Becky and Janet. Becky Vinylface was a young doll who had been sent by the faculty of University in Toy World, Universitoy in Toy World, to act as guardian to 3-year-old Janet Ryan. She'd just arrived on the scene of a tussle between the toddler and her mother Lyra over sweets. "I want some sweeties," she heard her whine to her mother's face. "Janet Ryan, that's very naughty. You do not act this way over sweets," she told her firmly. Lyra was taken aback by the fact her daughter stood down at the instruction of this strange young woman who looked exactly like a doll. "Who are you, and what right do you have? And what right have you telling my little girl what to do?" she asked. "Lyra Ryan? My name's Becky Vinylface from Toy World, recent graduate of Guardianship School at Universitoy. I was assigned to your daughter as her guardian," replied Becky, shaking Lyra's hand. "Thank goodness you're here, Becky. Glad to have you on board." "Which part of Toy World are you from?" replied Lyra. "Dolchester, Mrs. Ryan," replied Becky. She lowered herself to Janet's level. "Hi, Janet. I'm your new guardian from Toy World, Becky Vinylface. But you can call me Becky," she said sweetly, shaking her hand. "Hello, Becky," said Janet. When they got back to the Ryan household, Becky explained to Janet exactly what her job requirements were to help her understand what was expected of her. So, "Now that we understand each other, I think you owe your mummy an apology for being naughty out there today," Becky told her. Janet looked Becky in the eye. "Do I have to?" she whined. Becky stood up tall and crossed her arms. "Janet, do you need to go to bed?" she asked firmly. "I don't want to go to bed," replied Janet. "Well then, do as I say and go and say sorry to Mummy for your behaviour," Becky instructed her. "Yes, Becky," replied Janet, and went to apologise to Lyra for her behaviour. "That little girl is going to be quite a challenge," Becky sighed. When Janet came back, Becky sat her down and explained to her that her own mother, Carice, was Lyra's assigned guardian as a child. "How old were you, Becky?" asked Janet. "I wasn't even born yet at the time, considering that was 25 years ago." She was a recent graduate of the guardianship program herself. That night, both she and Lyra shared the duty of putting Janet to bed. Once Janet was asleep, Lyra turned to Becky. "It's time to assume the appearance of a normal doll now, Becky, as per your job description," she told her and watched as she sat in the armchair and went limp. Lyra wished her a good night and turned in for the night. Now, guys, did you catch the retcon in that story? The retcon was the changing of Janet Ryan's age from 2 to 3. Okay. So our last story of the day will be Universitoy. This one's a prequel to the story I've just read, by the way. So, prologue. Young Becky Vinylface was a precocious young dolly who was on a class trip to the Guys and Dolls Company to learn about loving and caring. and what it takes to be a dolly childcare provider. Her teacher, Mrs. China, was very pleased with her attention to detail. "I want to do this with my life one day," she told her. The tour guide was astonished by this revelation. "My goodness, young Becky, you're 6 years old and you've already chosen your future," he said. "Yes, sir." I think I should read that again, actually. So, "My goodness, young Becky, you're 6 years old and you've already chosen your future?" he said. "Yes, sir," replied Becky. Mrs. China smiled at her. "Your parents work here, don't they?" she said. "Yes, Mrs. China, it's a family tradition. My grandparents worked here too, as did my great-grandparents. I hope to follow in their footsteps," replied Becky. One of the workers passed them on her way to her workstation. She stopped to talk to the class about the hard work and dedication it would take to qualify for the job before the company could offer them jobs. "Where do we have to go to learn how to qualify?" asked Becky. "The company accepts employees who graduate from 3 universities in all of Toy World. Dorchester University, Dorchester University College." Yes, that spells duck. Okay. um, Twy, Toy World Institute, and University, which is where I studied for 3 years and came to work here straight afterwards, she told the class. Becky was so enthralled by this, she decided to dedicate the next 12 years to getting accepted at university. 12 years later, Becky Varnoface had dedicated 12 years of her life since she was 6 years old to landing a place at university to major in dolly childcare, a degree that, if she earned it, would allow her to take childcare jobs, indeed in or outside of Toy World. It would take her 3 years to qualify if they accepted her. It was July, and she was awaiting her letter from the Dean of Faculty at university to tell her whether she had had a place in their school of dolly childcare or not. The mail arrived at 9 on the dot, and with it was her letter from university. She opened it nervously, out of excitement and worry. It was brilliant news, as they'd accepted her into her chosen course as one of that year's 200 applicants to that course. She was so excited she danced around for hours. September came, and she was off to university to study dolly childcare. As soon as she entered the campus, she was greeted by the head of admissions, who greeted her warmly and showed her to the sign-up booth to sign up for her course and get her student ID card. Once that was done, she joined the welcome tour with the other new students, which was being guided by Amanda Priestley, a senior student in child guidance, who was entering her 6th and final year of study before she qualified. She showed them everything from the study halls and canteens to the student stores and lounges. After that, Becky checked into her room at the Ambient Creek boarding house, which she was sharing with 5 other students: Dennis Cloakworthy, Faith Stuffer, Tate Mercer, Leah China, and Simon Fluffman. All 6 became fast friends. Despite all being first-year students in different majors, so all had different course uniforms and textbooks. That afternoon, they all attended the fraternity and sorority fair to see if any of the houses on campus were interested in having them among their ranks. To Becky's amazement, all of the sorority houses wanted her to join them, but she could only accept the invitation from one of them. So she accepted the invitation to join the Pink Maiden sorority and fitted in there perfectly. This meant she now shared a house with 8 other sisters and was very happy. The next morning she entered the school of Dolly Childcare for the first time, and the course master, Dr. Plushmore, was pleased to meet her and have her in his class. She took her seat at the front of the class and in the center seat so she wouldn't miss a thing. Dr. Plushmore partnered all his new students with returning students, and Becky was partnered up with final year student Laura Stitchface, a senior member of her sorority, and was more than pleased to work with her. Over the course of that day, Laura guided Becky through the basics of the course and was amazed by how quickly she learned what she needed to do. "Well done, Becky," she said proudly. Over the course of her time at university, Becky learned everything she needed to know, from going out into the human world to care for a child, and met lots of interesting toys and people, even taking part-time babysitting jobs in the human world during reading weeks. 3 years later, Becky Vinylface was a young doll who was on the cusp of graduation from a 3-year Dolly Childcare course at university, after studying hard over that time, striving to earn her degree. As she left the outfitting department in her full academic dress for the school of Dolly Childcare, which consisted of a cap, gown, and gloves, she went off to meet her parents and younger brother Tyler, who had come to see her graduation ceremony. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, she walked across the stage to receive her diploma and first full-time job assignment from Dorchester Dolly Childcare Nurseries Incorporated, where she'd be working from then on. As they handed her certification that she graduated from the University School of Dolly Childcare with first-class honours, they announced they would be sending her to London to help care for a 3-year-old girl named Janet. As she made her way to the Gateway Junction, she met 2 human children, brother and sister, Rex and Daisy, who were on a tour of Toy World, and this was their next stop. She introduced herself and said she was pleased to meet them before reporting to her gateway portal to London. Further confirmation of a retcon. But that is it for the Toy World spin-offs, guys. There are only 2 of them, unless I decide to write more. So in the next episode where I read these, we go to the second main storyline. Until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a Semajical time. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Lana Sparks segment of Semajical Story Time, where we now go into the third installment of that series, which is Lana Sparks and the Librarian from Space. Wonder City Library, 2500. Lana Sparks loved visiting the library at weekends and on her Friday afternoons off, as Wonder City High gave their students every Friday afternoon off. It was 1 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and she was at the library where everybody knew her and was friends with her. One person in particular caught her interest. Was the librarian who ran the place on Fridays. His name was Mr. Bookmark, which was a most unusual name for a human librarian, she thought. He knew her well enough to allow her to use his first name, Fictony. As she checked at least 10 books out, they talked about his family life. "So why is your family name Bookmark?" she asked. "Because on my home planet, all names are book-related," he replied. "You're not human, Tony?" she asked, surprised. "No, Lana, I'm not human. I'm from Libraria. That's my home world," he told her. "And what's your job on Libraria?" asked Lana. "Believe it or not, I work in a library there too," replied Tony. Lana couldn't help laughing at the incredible irony of her friend being a librarian from a planet called Libraria. Not gonna lie, I wrote this. "So you're a librarian? She laughed. "Yes, Lana," replied Tony. He waited for her to calm down before letting her check out her books. "I'm sorry if that came across as racist," she said. "That's all right. I know it sounds funny and ironic," replied Tony, bidding her a good weekend and serving his next customer. After his shift, he took a book Lana had forgotten to her and met her parents, who were pleased to meet him. "It's very nice to meet you folks," he said, shaking their hands. He was intrigued as to why Lana was reading books about space travel and its history. "I'm preparing to take the entry exam into Wonder City Space Academy," she told him. "Hoping to be a space explorer, are you?" he asked her. "Yes, Tony, I am," she replied. "Good for you, Lana. I hope you get in and achieve your goal," he said. "Thanks, Tony," replied Lana. And that was Sparks. That was Lana Sparks and the Librarian from Space. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. You'll know when the next time for reading one of these pops up. But until then, thanks for watching and have a magical time. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Semajical Story Time for the Oldest Man section. We're now on the 4th installment of that series, The Oldest Man Goes to Fairyland. Here we go. Hello again, Milton Keynes here. As you know from last time, I'm half fairy. My mother was Chronica the Time Fairy, arrested when I was born for breaking two important sections of the Fairy Code. Those are the laws of Fairyland, my other home besides Earth. It has been 19 years since we last met, and I revealed my true heritage to you. It is now 2051, and I am now 197 years old. I'm out and about for the first time in 129 years, and loving it. As I walk around, I spot an emergency and intervene. But they say I'm too old to assist, so ignore my efforts. That's when I decided to use some of my fairy magic to reveal my fairy form and help them sort out the problem. Whilst I'm doing this, the scenery around me changes to a lush green field in a magical wood. My aura dies down, and I resume my civilian form, and look around me. Where am I? I ask myself. I walk around in search of help, when a group of young fairy children spots me, and make rude noises at me as I pass them. It isn't long before a young fairy spots me and approaches me from across the street. "Excuse me, sir," she says. I stop and look at her. "Hi, madam. I wonder if you can help me," I say. "That's what I was wondering. You look lost," she tells me. "I am lost, Miss Fairy," I reply. "Please, young man, drop the miss. My name's Illyria. What might yours be?" The fairy replies, shaking my hand. "Keynes is the name. Milton Keynes," I reply. And she takes one look into my eye. "Did you just say you're Milton Keynes?" she asked. "Yes, Illyria," I reply. And she... "How is it that you have access to Fairyland and its magical secrets?" she asks. "My mother was one of your people, Chronica the Time Fairy," I tell her, and she is shocked. "Did you just say Chronica was your mother?" she asked. "Yes, Illyria," I reply. "How long ago?" she asks. "I'm 197 years old now," I tell her. "So in Earth years, that would make you born in 1854? She deduces. "Correct," I reply. "Here in Fairyland, it is currently the year 1527 of the Council era," Illyria tells me. After talking to her for an hour, she escorts me to see the council, and they greet me warmly. "Welcome to your other biological home, Milton Keynes, son of Chronica the Time Fairy, who is sadly no longer with us," the Grand Elder tells me. "I know my mother broke the laws against falling in love and having children with humans to bring me into existence, so you arrested her when I was born," I tell them. The Grand Elder looks me in the eye. "Yes, my boy, we had to arrest her for that. I trust you also know of the fate she received?" he asks. "Yes, sir. She was executed for her crimes against the Fairy Code," I reply. "Exactly. Your father must have told you when you were old enough," he assumes. "Yes, sir. He told me on my 18th birthday," I admit. "Milton, As your chronicler's son, you have inherited her magic abilities, and can use them to help us keep time flowing consistently, if you'd like to take the mantle, he told me. Aren't I a fugitive here too? I asked. No, my boy, of course not. You're not in any trouble here. You are one of us, and we'd like you to consider our offer, he tells me. I'll consider it, sir, I tell him. Illyria offers me free lodging with her, and wants to make me feel welcome in Fairyland. Next morning, members of the Fairy Council pay me a visit to offer me the job again, which I accept, and they induct me to the council. You can still receive spiritual guidance from your mother, they tell me, before leaving. And that is why this story was important to be read first, guys. Because this is where it starts interconnecting with the Fairyland tales themselves. So we'll be reading the next Fairyland tale in the next episode. Until then, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and have us a magical time. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Semajical Story Time for the Oldest Man section. We're now on the 4th installment of that series, The Oldest Man Goes to Fairyland. Here we go. Hello again, Milton Keynes here. As you know from last time, I'm half fairy. My mother was Chronica the Time Fairy, arrested when I was born for breaking 2 important sections of the Fairy Code. Those are the laws of Fairyland, my other home besides Earth. It has been 19 years since we last met, and I revealed my true heritage to you. It is now 2051, and I am now 197 years old. I'm out and about for the first time in 129 years, and loving it. As I walk around, I spot an emergency and intervene. But they say I'm too old to assist, so ignore my efforts. That's when I decided to use some of my fairy magic to reveal my fairy form and help them sort out the problem. Whilst I'm doing this, the scenery around me changes to a lush green field in a magical wood. My aura dies down, and I resume my civilian form, and look around me. Where am I? I ask myself. I walk around in search of help, when a group of young fairy children spots me, and make rude noises at me as I pass them. It isn't long before a young fairy spots me and approaches me from across the street. Excuse me, sir, she says. I stop and look at her. Hi, madam. I wonder if you can help me, I say. That's what I was wondering. You look lost, she tells me. I am lost, Miss Fairy, I reply. Please, young man, drop the miss. My name's Illyria. What might yours be? The fairy replies, shaking my hand. Keynes is the name. Milton Keynes. I reply, and she takes one look into my eye. Did you just say you're Milton Keynes? She asked. Yes, Illyria, I reply. And she... How is it that you have access to fairyland and its magical secrets? She asks. My mother was one of your people, Chronica the Time Fairy, I tell her, and she is shocked. Did you just say Chronica was your mother? She asked. Yes, Illyria, I reply. How long ago? She asks. I'm 197 years old now, I tell her. So in Earth years, that would make you born in 1854? She deduces. Correct, I reply. Here in Fairyland, it is currently the year 1527 of the Council era, Illyria tells me. After talking to her for an hour, she escorts me to see the Council, and they greet me warmly. Welcome to your other biological home, Milton Keynes, son of Chronica the Time Fairy, who is sadly no longer with us, the Grand Elder tells me. I know my mother broke the laws against falling in love and having children with humans to bring me into existence, so you arrested her when I was born, I tell them. The Grand Elder looks me in the eye. Yes, my boy, we had to arrest her for that. I trust you also know of the fate she received? He asks. Yes, sir. She was executed for her crimes against the fairy code, I reply. Exactly. Your father must have told you when you were old enough, he assumes. Yes, sir. He told me on my 18th birthday, I admit. Milton, as your Chronica's son, you have inherited her magic abilities, and can use them to help us keep time flowing consistently, if you'd like to take the mantle, he told me. Aren't I a fugitive here too? I ask. No, my boy, of course not. You're not in any trouble here. You are one of us, and we'd like you to consider our offer, he tells me. I'll consider it, sir, I tell him. Illyria offers me free lodging with her, and wants to make me feel welcome in Fairyland. Next morning, members of the Fairy Council pay me a visit to offer me the job again, which I accept, and they induct me to the Council. You can still receive spiritual guidance from your mother, they tell me, before leaving. And that is why this story was important to be read first, guys. Because this is where it starts interconnecting with the Fairyland tales themselves. So we'll be reading the next Fairyland tale in the next episode. Until then, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and have us a magical time. Hi guys, and welcome back to Semajical Story Time for the Fairyland Tales category, where we now get into the 6th of those that I wrote, and of course you know which one that's going to be now, because it's the son of Chronica. Milton Keynes had lived among the fairies for the last 3 years and was now 200 years old. He was still lodging with Illyria, who was also training him in the art of fairy magic and all the laws of fairyland. This knowledge was vital to him, as this was his other biological home world. As the son of the former time fairy, he was due to pick up where she left off before abandoning her duties to start a family with his father. It was his first day on the job, and he was nervous. Illyria escorted him to the council time portal. "I know you're nervous, Milton, but you'll be fine. I promise you. And I promise you that," she told him comfortingly. He hugged her before stepping forward. The Grand Elder addressed him. "Milton Keynes, our new time fairy, you are about to embark on your first mission for this council," he said. "Yes, sir," replied Milton. "Once you step through this portal, you will arrive on the other side of Earth in the year 1692. Be very careful not to be mistaken for a witch, as you will arrive in Salem during the witch trials. To blend in, we advise transforming before you go," the Grand Elder told him. Milton used his magic to transform into a colonial American pilgrim father, and off he went. He arrived and immediately blended in with the locals. Nobody suspected anything, which was just how he wanted it. He knew he was only to reveal himself in an emergency, and was not to interfere with how time played out. He attended his first few trials and executions. After a few days, he was doing his job as the protector of time, when he witnessed a young woman with long wavy brown hair about to be shoved off a cliff. "Uh-oh," he thought, as he saw the woman being shoved off the cliff and revealing herself to be a fairy. Back at the Fairy Council, they were watching on the screens and saw him rooted to the spot as the other young fairy landed and walked his way. "We hadn't counted on this," said the Grand Elder. Illyria looked alarmed. "Get him out of there, quick! Chronica's there! If they meet each other, time will be altered drastically." She panicked. "Don't worry, my dear. He doesn't know it's her," he told her. Back in Salem, Massachusetts, 1692, Chronica walked past Milton and stopped. "That was close," she said. She got herself together and walked through a portal that just opened up without so much as a glance at him. That was a close one, he thought, and carried on with his work. A week later, it was Milton's turn to be suspected of witchcraft after accidentally using magic to repair a wound for a child. He was found guilty of witchcraft and sentenced to the final test, just as he'd seen his mother do without even knowing it, and shoved off a cliff, only to poof into his true form and save his life. He came to a landing just outside the trouble and walk off to where he stood a week earlier. After such a close shave, the council decided to bring him home. As soon as he arrived back, he was in shock. "Was that my mother back there?" he asked. "Yes, son, I'm afraid it was. It was a mistake to send you to that period," replied the Grand Elder. The next morning, Milton was ready to return to London, 2054. They thanked him for his help and apologized for nearly causing him to breach the law against messing with time. As soon as he arrived home, he received a visit from a special spirit. It was the form of a young woman with long wavy brown hair. She was smiling at him. "Milton, my dear son," she said lovingly. "Mother?" said Milton inquisitively. Yes, sweetheart, it's me. Your mother, Chronica the Time Fairy, replied Chronica. I'm sorry, Mother, said Milton. Sorry? Don't talk such nonsense, my dear son. You did well on your first mission, and I'm very proud of you, said Chronica. We almost met each other in person, though, said Milton. I know we did, but luckily none of us realized the other was there. Even if we had met, you would have just been an elderly man in that time, she reminded him. That is true. Replied Milton. I was watching you from the realm of dead sparkles, every aspect of your life. You could have summoned me for advice any time you needed it, she told him. And you're proud of the man I've become? Asked Milton. Milton Keynes, I am really proud of the man you've become. You're a good man to everyone who has crossed your path. You've led the life I always wanted you to lead, Chronica told him. Except being asked to take my job over, I hope the council would have given you a safer job, she told him. It's a bloodline thing, Mother. I had to take the mantle from you, replied Milton. Oh well, if you must do my old job, I want you to be very careful in case you run into me again. We can never be allowed to meet during your missions in the present and my past missions, she warned him. I understand, Mother, replied Milton. Chronica smiled as she faded away. I love you, Milton, she said before completely fading. I love you too, Mother, replied Milton. As he entered the home, he reverted back to his elderly human appearance. Before going to bed, a bright light regenerated his appearance to that of a younger man. And that was the son of Chronica. And if you want to know Chronica's story, that's the next story in the line, guys. That's coming up when next time I read one of these comes. So until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have a Semajical time. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Destinyverse category of Semajical Story Time, the show where I come on and read stories that I have written or retell certain ones. So we're on the Destiny, we're now up to the 15th of these stories overall. But the second of the Lily sub-series, which would be Lily at 14. London, 1952. Lily Ball had just celebrated her 14th birthday and was the eldest, cleverest and prettiest girl in her class at school. All the boys liked her and all wanted to date her, but she was unsure if she was ready to start dating yet. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon and she was walking home with her best friends Jane Rogers a redhead with long frizzy hair, and donned pink uniform and liked scary stories, and Thomas Jones, a sporty young blonde boy with short spiky hair who played goalie on the school football team. These were the only two in her class who truly understood her and knew she wasn't ready for a relationship yet. She was very happy in her life, which was perfect according to her. She had a very loving and supportive family, even though she was adopted by them during the war, but that didn't matter. Crystal was a loving mother to her, and always had been since she took her in as an evacuee during the war, when she wasn't even a year old yet. And her older brothers Ryan and Simon were 4 and 5. She was adopted with them 2 years into the war. Destiny was likewise as her grandmother, who adored everything about her, and Dennis was the best uncle she could have hoped for, as he was loads of fun. She had an aunt and cousins on his side of the family too, but she hardly saw them. Her brother sadly became ill and died, while she was still a young child. 2 major changes had taken place over the past 4 years. The first change was Crystal married a nice young man named Norman, giving her a father figure to look up to as well as a mother. And the second change was that, thanks to this, she was now big sister to his 3-year-old son Daniel, and she just loved him to pieces. As they arrived outside the house, she hugged her 2 best friends goodbye and entered the house. As soon as she opened the front door, Daniel ran into her arms, and she scooped him up. "Hello, baby," she said as she hugged him tightly. She shut the door and carried him into the living room, where Crystal relieved her of him and gestured towards an empty seat on the sofa. "How was school today, sweetheart?" she asked. It was very quiet, considering there are 16 first formers in the place, who were usually very noisy, replied Lily. "I see. So you had no trouble taming them?" said Crystal. "None at all," replied Lily. "Did the headmaster have the chat with you?" asked Crystal. "He did, actually, and he told me he thinks I'm ready to leave school and start work," replied Lily. "I agree with him, darling. You are more than ready to enter the real world," replied Crystal. "The question is, are there potential employers looking for help?" asked Lily. "Yes, there are, sweetheart. All local shops looking for new employees. They pay fairly. You should look into them," Crystal told her. The next day, Lily went to apply in all 3 shops, and the last one to see her hired her on the spot, stating she was exactly what they were looking for. She was put to work straight away, stocking the shelves. While she was busy doing that, she caught a 12-year-old girl stealing a chocolate bar. "Oh, no you don't, missy," she scolded before the girl could leave the shop. "What?" asked the girl innocently. "Don't try that innocent act on me, Darcy Fields. I know you have a stolen chocolate bar in your bag. Take it out at once," she scolded. "No, I don't. No, I don't," whined Darcy. "Oh, really?" scolded Lily, reaching into Darcy's bag and pulling out the chocolate bar. "Then kindly explain to me how this chocolate bar ended up in your bag. It clearly has its price label," she scolded, and took Darcy to see her employer. Mr. Gerayan Durant had reported her to him, and reported her to him. Durante. He looked at Darcy. "Do you have the money to purchase this chocolate bar?" he asked her. "No, sir. I haven't any money," replied Darcy, prompting Mr. Durante to call the police and report her for shoplifting, leading to her arrest on the charge of the crime. "Thank you for catching her when you did, Lily," he said. "Just doing my job, Mr. Durante," replied Lily, returning to her task. At the end of her first shift, she was paid double her agreed wage for doing double duty as a shelf filler and a security officer. The next story along these lines will be the 9th in the Mainline Destiny series, but until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have a magical time. Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of the Fairyland Tales segment of Semajical Story Time. We're now on the 7th one of these I wrote, and this would be the story, this would be the story of Chronica. The early years. The story of Chronica begins in Fairyland in the year 488 of the Council era, when two young fairies who had already been qualified fairies for over a century, Solaris and his wife Luna, had just welcomed their newborn twinklet into the world. They had a newborn daughter who they temporarily named Astra, as they didn't know what her magical ability was going to be yet. Solaris used his magic to raise the sun in the morning and set it at night. Luna used her magic to raise the moon at night and lower it at daybreak. As Astra had only just come out of her star pod, she was too young yet for her magic to show itself. After a year of not showing any signs of magical ability, Astra finally started to develop some magic, but she was only a year old. It was unclear which one of her powers would latch on to her. She was displaying 3 at once, including levitation and time manipulation, as she stopped the kitchen clock of their house. By the time she was 3, the time manipulation ability had chosen her as its holder, as she briefly disappeared into a portal before reappearing and landing on her feet. "I got my power!" she said excitedly. Luna picked her up. "Yes, Chronica, but you need to be careful with it," she told her. Chronica smiled up at her. "I like that name," she said. Now that Chronica had her magical ability, she had earned herself an official name, which she was happy with. Solaris and Luna took her to see the council, who were surprised to learn that their little twinklet had been chosen by the time magic, and tested her on the strength of her magic. "Now, Chronica, you must swear never to mess with time in any way," they warned her. "I swear, Mr. Council Leader, sir," replied Chronica. As the years passed, Chronica started learning to hone and control her magic, so it wouldn't take her over. By the time she'd graduated fairy school, she was ready for a part-time job in Fairyland, which was easy, as she was hired by the council as their time guard to keep the time flowing consistently, which she did, as per her magic. Within the next 10 years, this was assigned as her full-time job, which she accepted and started monitoring history to check that nothing had been changed. On her 490th birthday, she got her wand and her wings. As she was the time fairy, her wand had a clock head that measured the time in decades, centuries, and millennia. She was also now studying towards her twinkling in 22 years' time. Twinkling and first mission. Chronica had waited 512 years for this day, and it was finally here. Solaris and Luna were there to proudly watch their daughter twinkle and become a fully fledged fairy. She was standing before the council as they asked her a series of questions to determine her worthiness of the confirmation into the Fairyland community. As she answered the last question, confirming her loyalty to all fairies, they performed the ceremony, and she was finally of age in the fairy world. While this was going on, two of her neighbors, Sirius and Starla, had just had a little twinklet named Illyria, and yes, that was her official name, as this was modern fairyland. She was very pleased for them, and thought Illyria was the cutest little twinklet she'd ever seen. 4 years later, she was summoned by the council for her mission briefing, as they were sending her out into the human world. She was to be located in medieval England in the year 1325 as a monitor to observe the happenings, only intervening when she noticed any illegal changes starting to happen. After swearing she'd only reveal herself in such an emergency, she magically transformed into a medieval woman and stepped through their portal into the time period, where she blended in very well, without arousing suspicion of any form of magic. She kept a watchful eye on the landscape from her watchtower for the next year and a half, without any disruptions taking place. She was in the second year of her mission. It was in the second year of her mission that she witnessed something that started to alter the period. Someone turned up with medication to cure a cold a child had come down with. Knowing the child was supposed to die from this illness, she acted on the emergency by revealing her true form to stop the mysterious traveler from reaching the child with the medication. She got there just as he arrived and stopped him. "Excuse me, young man, can I see some identification?" she demanded. The traveler showed her his ID card. "Maxwell Swan, born 1976? She questioned. "That's right," replied Max. "You were born in the 20th century? She asked him. "Yes, ma'am," replied Max. "What year are you from?" she asked. "I'm here from the year 2020, replied Max. "You're visiting from the 21st century? She demanded. "Yes," replied Max. "And you were going to interfere with this sick young boy's death by giving him these cold and flu pills from your era?" she demanded. "I was going to save his life," replied Max. "I cannot allow you to commit such an act," she scolded. "Why not?" asked Max. "3 reasons come to mind. The first of which is I'm Chronica the Time Fairy on a mission from my council to protect history from being tampered with. The second of which is that boy in there is supposed to lose his life to that illness. And the last of which is by bringing medication back in time from the future to give to the child, you are seriously breaching the laws of time, and by extension that section of the fairy code," she scolded. "But I'm not a fairy," replied Max. No, but as a human breaking the code, you fall subject to that section of said code, she scolded. She confiscated Max's time machine, along with the pills, sending him to the Fairy Council before placing a magical bubble around him. What are you doing? He asked. Maxwell Swan, as a representative of the fairies, I'm arresting you for the attempted alteration of history in 14th century, on top of meddling with time by way of that machine of yours. She scolded before resuming her disguised form and escorting her detainee through the portal back to Fairyland and handing him over to the FCTF for his crimes against time and the Fairy Code. That's him taken care of, she sighed with relief, before reporting her discovery to the council, who thanked her for the report and commended her for catching such a dangerous criminal. She then donned her colonial American disguise and stepped through the next portal to America in the 1700s to continue her mission in a different time and place on Earth. The next decade went by, and she stopped dozens more alterations to history from being made before her mission ended. After over a decade, she returned home for her congratulatory address and much-needed rest. Working for the Fairy Code Task Force. 2 years later, Chronica was keeping time consistent in Fairyland. As Chronica was keeping time consistent in Fairyland, she was summoned by the Fairy Code Task Force and offered a spot on the team, which she graciously accepted. And as per her magic, she was appointed Fairyland's own agent of time, meaning from then on any time-related mission would be given to her by Chief Fluttercatch, and as such she was immediately sent on a mission for the Force to Victorian London to track down and capture some rebellious fairies who hijacked time travel magic before she was appointed. So, disguised as a Victorian civilian, she stepped through the portal to London 1835, to begin hunting down those naughty fairies. It wasn't long before she saw them with human husbands and hybrid children. Detecting this as a major breach of the Fairy Code, she revealed herself to them and arrested them all on the charges of falling in love with, marrying, and crossbreeding with humans, which all fell under the category of breaking the most important section of the Fairy Code, which had forbidden any fairy to fall in love with, marry, and have children with humans. This meant all of these fairies were subject to the death penalty when she brought them in for their crimes. She resumed her civilian form, apologized to their husbands for the inconvenience, and escorted her prisoners back to Fairyland, wiping the men's memories clean of the incident. Upon returning home, she quickly donned her police uniform and marched her detainees into the station, where they were booked for their crimes and properly charged before being stripped of their magic and jailed. They were sentenced to death 3 days later by dusting, meaning they were burnt into stardust and disposed of. The final days. As Chronica reached middle age for fairies at the age of 1024, she decided to leave the TCTF to pursue her own life instead of working for either the council or the task force, but she was unable to find another job. Until after 5 years of this, she accepted one last mission from the council. She was dispatched to monitor the Salem witch trials. For 2 years, of there should be a 10-year period. She did this quite successfully without either running into trouble herself or having to keep history consistent. That was until another time traveler appeared from the future and tried to rescue a woman from being drowned, but she stopped him, convincing him not to interfere without having to reveal herself. Before she went home, he witnessed her being shoved off a cliff for witchcraft, revealing her true form to save her life, before fluttering over to watch him disappear. She resumed her human civilian form before changing the clothes for Victorian attire and moved on to London 1852, where she met and began helping Simon Keynes, a young man, to move into his new home, but showed no signs of interest in him. That was until a few days later, when she forgot her mission briefing and rebelled against the fairy code by falling in love with Simon and moved in with him. They lived together happily for a year, and in December 1853 she became pregnant with their first child. It was the birth of their half-blood son Milton in September 1854 that this caught the attention of the FCTF, as they came flying into the Keynes household and arrested her for breaching the section of the fairy code forbidding fairies to fall in love with, marry and crossbreed with humans. She managed to seal her love inside her son and got Simon to promise not to tell him of his half-blood heritage until he turned 18. She was then escorted back to Fairyland and was put through the booking process. She was then reviewed because of her profile and her previous work for both the Force and the Council. After that, she spent 4 years in prison before having the death penalty passed on her and promptly being executed by the draining of her magic and then being burnt into stardust. And that was the story of Chronica. Her entire life. The next of these stories returns to the main storyline, but that won't be for a while yet. Until then, thanks for watching and have a Semajical time. And if you like, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lana Sparks section of Semajical Story Time, where it's now time to read the 4th installment in that series, which is, of course, Lana Sparks, Space Prodigy. Starship WCSC 116 D-Space 2504. Lana Sparks was 16 years old and had just graduated from Wonder City Space Corporation as its most promising cadet in many years. 200 years to be exact, as she was a prodigy in space travel and exploration, leading to her early graduation and promotion to an officer of Wonder City Corporation. She was recruited as a member of the corporation's 116th Space Exploration Team, and her captain, Tom Wade, was very pleased to have her on his team. and appointed her as one of his navigation team. So she was on the bridge with the core members of the team. They were out in deep space looking for an undiscovered planet when she noticed an asteroid, and she sent an orange alert to the rest of the team. "Captain, divert course! Asteroid ahead!" She personally alerted Captain Wade, and he ordered his pilots to divert the ship's course to save them from being hit by the asteroid. Pilots Dave Stone and Neva Mars thrust the ship to the side immediately to avoid the collision, which accidentally catapulted them into an undiscovered galaxy. Undiscovered galaxy. "Where are we, Captain?" asked Neva, out of bewilderment. "I don't know, Neva. It looks like some sort of galaxy," replied Wade. Lana was looking at her navigation screen. "We appear to have arrived in an undiscovered galaxy, Captain." "Yes, Lana, but how did we get here?" replied Wade. "I don't know, sir. I only alerted you to divert in order to avoid colliding with that asteroid," replied Luna. You did the right thing, Lana. You did the right thing, Lana. However, in your efforts to save us, we accidentally discovered this new galaxy," replied Wade. He ordered for a series of photos to be taken and beamed them down to mission control back at headquarters. Lana returned to her post and navigated them back to their normal trajectory, in the Earth's orbit. Deep Space 2504. She managed to bring them safely back into their deep space trajectory within 20 seconds, and everyone thought she deserved all the credit for discovering the new galaxy they'd just seen from the ship. "Dave, Nexa, set our course for home," Wade ordered, and they headed for home.
"Wait for that. I'll need to learn where your home is. What's that address?"
"Alexa, stop." And they headed for home after a great adventure, although by accident. Wonder City Space Corporation. They made it safely back to Earth, and had returned the ship to the hangar. Hang on a minute, that's not how you spell hangar, as in where you put aircraft. So, hangar. And reported to their commander, Adam Blitzworth, who congratulated them on their discovery. He then turned to Lana. "I especially wish to credit you for first discovering the new galaxy, Sparks," he told her. "Thank you, sir," replied Lana, saluting him and then shaking his hand. And that was Lana Sparks, Space Prodigy. The next time I read one of these stories will be a while, but I think you know what's coming next in terms of that story by number. So, until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a Semajical time. Hi guys, and welcome back to the oldest man segment of Semajical Story Time, where it's now time to read the fourth of these stories, Bride of the Oldest Man. Here we go. Hello, it's me again, Milton Keynes, and I'm in fairyland with my significant other, the fairy Illyria, who is an amazing young woman in this world, although she's actually some 300 years older than me. You see, another 3 years have passed since we last met. Here in fairyland, it is now the year 1533 of the Council era, whilst on Earth it is now 2057, making me 203 years old, and Illyria 533. Considering her birth here in fairyland that many years ago. That doesn't matter though, because we love each other, and have been officially together for 3 years. As I am half fairy, it's more than legal for this to happen. We are currently getting everything arranged, and have agreed to marry in the council offices, and have the Minister of Fairyland officiate the wedding. My best fairy is Stardust, the space fairy, and the maiden of honor is Starla, Illyria's mum. Jig, the musical fairy, will be our musician, whilst Wine and Dine, the fairies of food and drink, will provide the food and drink. Duh. Okay. We will have every fairy in the land as our guests. As we finish arranging, Illyria takes me to one side, beaming with joy. What is it, honey? I ask her. Milton, I have something very important to tell you, she tells me. Okay, sweetheart, what is it? I ask. I'm pregnant, Milton. We got a little twinklet on the way, she tells me. That should be beam, with joy, to learn I'm going to be a father. Let's change that quickly. It was just magical. We go and share the news with Sirius and Starla, who are thrilled to learn they're going to be grandparents as well as in-laws. Of course this means we will be getting married very soon, as our twinklet might be born sooner than usual for a fairy, due to my half-human genetics, and my biological time manipulation ability. And so the wedding happens literally the week after it's arranged, and we are both really happy to be married at last. However, before we go off on our honeymoon, at my new wife's request, I place us in a time bubble which slows down time to the same speed of a normal fairy, which is around the 5-year mark. After that, we head off to the Marshmallow Hotel on the east side of Fairyland. And that was Bride of the Oldest Man. Next time I'll read one of these, I think it will be story number 5 in the series. Until then, if you enjoyed this video, please do me the honor of liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Having a nice day. I thank you for watching and having a magical time.